By this moment, My Little Pony was taking the world by storm, making some of the biggest hits on television. What can possibly go wrong for MLP? Oh yeah. The story starts off with the Equestria Girls getting used to their powers. Yeah, get used to that. The charm of Rainbow Rocks was that the story was very simple. But with this, it's all over the place. I forgot what the story was about. This one feels a lot more clumsy, with some moments that are awkwardly put together and don't really make much sense or have any payoff. I was hoping to see what kind of villain Gaia Everfree was going to be, but it turns out she isn't real. In fact, the real villain is just a girl turning into a she-demon. Wait, haven't we already seen this with the last movie? I get it, power corrupts, but we just dealt with this girl. What's the point of calling your movie The Legend of Everfree when you botched the legend parts? I think it could have been a lot more creative. Like, they could have done a lot more with it. For example, give credit to the animators that they're trying to make the animation funny, but the script doesn't give them much to work with. But there's a lot of missed opportunities. I'm gonna give you a guess at what happens. No, really. Guess what happens? This is literally the 5th time they've done this! Every time they incorporate these, you know exactly what's gonna happen! Stories they tell are retreads of what we've seen before. It's also strange that the best of the Equestria Girls series is still Rainbow Rocks. Why couldn't they make a follow-up that was just as equally strong? So I sat down, I put it on, and it's just like all the other Equestria Girls movies. And that's pretty much the problem. But I do give credit that she doesn't turn into a raging she-demon like the other villains before, but when you still have to have her shooting magical lasers at people, and our main character is doing a magical transformation, you can't do all this sympathy stuff and have everyone be invested. By the way, Pinky saying food jokes is really getting old. It was fine the first time, but now it really has overstayed its welcome. So many other film series evolving and taking more chances. The Equestria Girls movies, however, are comfortable doing the same goddamn thing over and over again. As a fan, you should not be okay with this. You should demand something different, something you haven't seen before. Let's step up our game, let's step up our characters. Something fresh and new. Fresh and new. Fresh and new. Fresh and new. In an interesting year for film sequels. We have Lego Movie 2, How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Avengers Endgame. Most of them have mixed to positive reactions. But the main point is that they were doing something completely unique from their predecessors, thereby creating a unique movie-going experience. Talking about those more interesting sequels, we're talking about Equestria Girls Sunset's Backstage Pass, the 9th entry in the series that refuses to do anything different. Let's talk about the story. I mean, if you haven't known already, the main 6 get backstage passes for Post Crush, a pop band that's playing at a music festival, the Star Swirl Music Festival to be precise. But it all goes downhill when some equestrian magic creates a time loop that causes Sunset to repeat the same day over and over again. Now Sunset has to find a way to find out what's causing the time loop. This would lead to filler that should have been edited out, food jokes that prove time and time again to be not funny, and fan-favorite characters wasted to an epic degree. And a surprise weak-ass villain that everyone sees coming, but the fans keep falling for it. The story is based on the 1993 comedy Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray relives the same day over and over again. But that story on an everyday jerk becoming a better person. But screw that comedy classic. This is Equestria Girls 9, which is about pitch-perfect snowflakes that never change throughout the entire series. And that's one of the biggest problems with the Equestria Girls series. The main characters never develop. Rarity still goes on about fashion. Rainbow Dash is still trying to show off. Pinkie Pie still spouts out food jokes. Fluttershy is still, well, shy. And honestly, I don't think that's a good thing. Characters, whether they be main or supporting, need to go through a change during the course of a narrative. And if it's a series, it has to be increased tenfold. If not, the characters will be stagnant. People relate more to characters that go through changes because we ourselves go through changes, and it makes the experience a lot more engaging. But the Equestria Girls series completely rejects that because it's more interested in selling toys and pandering to the fans' low attention span they think they have and encourages them to keep. The biggest offender is none other than Sunset Shimmer. And I'm just gonna say it. What was the charm of her again? I mean, she played the main character role in Rainbow Rocks, alright, but looking back at all the films and specials that came out, I realized she doesn't have much of a personality. One episode she could be the outsider, the next she would be silly, the next one she would obsess over a yearbook, next she's an angry gamer, and here she's obsessing over a band. There's no distinction. I know by default and experience that Starlight is technically worse, but both have the same problem. They're just lumps of clay that the writers can mold into whatever the story requires them to be. But let's talk about the one thing you really want me to address. The return of the Dazzlings. This would have to be the biggest, fattest middle finger to a fandom and a fan favorite character you will ever see in the entire fandom. For starters, the Dazzlings are now reformed. Now on the one hand, that's kind of a ballsy move. I mean, this is fantasy, a genre where characters switch sides at the end or even at the halfway point. But this seems more frustrating because the Dazzlings were one of the saving graces of Rainbow Rocks. Fans loved them not because they were complex or sympathetic, it was because that they were cool bad guys. Fans really did not want to see them be reformed. The other problem with it is that it's very unharmonious. We don't even get a character arc for them. Most reformed villains in any other series would go through a journey that changes them from a villain to hero. Whether it be to help the main protagonist help take down a more sinister threat, or just simple survival. But all we get from the Dazzlings is just one music video. Okay, to be fair, the video is fine, the animation is fine, and the song itself is fine. But in context, it's uncaringly saying, "You're good now, I guess." But now before Lily Orchard can tear this subject matter to shreds, it's not even the worst part. Yeah, let that sink in. Reforming the Dazzlings is not the worst part. The real worst part is that the Dazzlings have only one scene. And to make matters worse, they serve no purpose to the story. Yes, really. They only have one scene with Sunset in which it turns out they weren't behind the time loop. Not what we wanted. We wanted them to have a big role. When Neo came back in RWBY Volume 6, she was given a bigger role. Even when Discord and Chrysalis came back in MLP, they were given big roles. But here, the Dazzlings are just tossed aside as if they were nothing. Come to think of it, the Shadow Bolts are the only returning characters given more screen time to shine than the Dazzlings. Which means Hasbro is more interested in the Shadow Bolts than they are with the Dazzlings. And the only reason that the Dazzlings are even in this special is to keep the fans quiet so Hasbro doesn't have to listen to them. You are asking, if the Dazzlings aren't the villains, who is? That's right, another girl using equestrian magic for her own benefits. So, let me clarify this. The Dazzlings, one of the Brony community's favorite villains, are now reformed, had one music video, given one scene in the special, just to be pushed to the side like trash, just to make way for another carbon copy villain. This is probably the biggest insult to a fandom you can ever possibly do. Bringing back a fan favorite character only to do nothing with them. Which, let's talk about these new villains. Post-Crush. They're a pop star duo that bicker and argue with each other, and wait a minute, another pop star villain? Isn't that kind of redundant seeing that the Dazzlings are already in the special? Why replace the Dazzlings with literal carbon copies of the same thing? What were they thinking? The biggest problem is that they're just the same lame villains we've seen in the other Equestria Girls movies, with nothing new added. They're just people that want something in life but go to extremes that would actually get you arrested in real life. Don't believe me? Let's take a look back, shall we? Gloriosa Daisy ties up underage students and holds them hostage. Juniper Montage sabotages a movie production and tried to trap the people who caught her in a magic mirror. Wallflower Blush erased everyone's memories of Sunset out of spite. What's-Her-Face borderline kidnaps students and attempts mass murder. Now these new villains created a time loop to create the perfect day. But when our main protagonist finds out, they lock them up in their bus. Congratulations! You're one step of becoming a pervert. Happy now? And for some reason, they get reformed and awarded by the end of the special. Why does every one of these Equestria Girls specials need to have a bad guy? The original Groundhog Day didn't have a bad guy. Kiki's Delivery Service didn't have a bad guy. My Neighbor Totoro didn't have a bad guy. Even Finding Dory didn't have a bad guy. So why does this need a bad guy? One thing that makes me cringe about these new villains is that we're supposed to sympathize with them. Pardon my French, but I call bullshit. I feel more sympathetic for Princess Luna and Sassy Saddles than I ever done with any of these clowns. One of the reasons was that they were socially awkward, but still normal. Yeah, sure, Luna did some pretty freaky things like turning fake spiders into real spiders, but she didn't do it out of malicious intent. She just wanted to fit in. She didn't attack people for running away from her. Sassy Saddles was kind of a bitch, but when you really get down to it, she was just trying to keep her job. She knew how to use Rarity's talents for her benefit, but was unintentionally making her miserable. She's insensitive, but she doesn't know she's causing pain. With the Equestria Girls villains, they clearly know they're doing wrong, actively going out of their way to hurt somebody or locking them up to keep them from interfering. The difference is how they're animated. Sassy and Luna are animated normally. They have more genuine facial expressions and body language that comes off as relatable. Equestria Girls villains, on the other hand, can have crazy over-the-top facial expressions that makes them look more psychotic than relatable. An exaggerated facial expression is used to make the character more comical or more frightening. And that's why it's hard to have an emotional connection with them, because they're animated like they want to come out of the screen and eat you. Honestly, I wish I could say more without literally saying the same thing I said in the previous reviews, and that's a bad sign. I know there's a lot of people who are gonna like this special, and I respect that, but you deserve better. You deserve a better story. You deserve better characters. My generation has failed you. This message goes out to Hasbro or whoever is making these Equestria Girls specials. Give us something different. No more carbon copy villains, no more food jokes, no more recycled plots. Give us something completely new. Give us something we haven't seen before. Develop your characters. Give us new storylines. Take more risks. Expand your horizons. Now this message goes out to all the bronies and Pegasisters watching this video. You have the right to demand better. Go to the writer's Twitter page and say this message. We want something different. Give us something different. Don't be sheep. You are better than this. You are capable of doing amazing things, and you're going to start by saying, I want something new. If you want to keep this fandom alive, you have to demand something new. That's the honest truth. Am I hurt, but just sitting there and cheering for every single solitary special is not going to make a change? Now it's time for your moment to shine. It's time for something different.